Welcome to the STARS program, seniors taking active roles in society. And now, here's your host, ANITA FINLEY.
So I want to introduce everyone to Dr. Bill Miller. He's calling in from Arizona. And I was fascinated by his practice because something that's very, very important to him is a great night's sleep. And he knows how you can get it. So we're going to ask him, Dr. Miller, what does it take to get a great night's sleep?
More than you think, and let me explain. We've got new research that has been very surprising to those of us in the medical community. I think some of your listeners might know about something called the microbiome. It's all about the bugs that are inside us and on us. We are surrounded by and made up of a substantial amount of microbial life. And all this pertains to sleep. This is not a digression. This is coning in on one of the ways we are going to talk about getting a good night's rest. The importance of these microbes is they're not hangers-on like we used to think when I went to medical school a long time ago. We now know that these are absolutely crucial parts of our total metabolism. And what the new research shows us is that these microbes, trillions of them in the gut, every part of our body has microbes. We used to think we were sterile on the inside, but we're far from it. But these microbes, to our surprise, have their own rhythms. They have their own rhythms, and they, in turn, affect our sleep-wake cycle. And so learning how to go and get a good night's sleep not only includes some of the old time-tested things that we've talked about, which is trying to get a regular sleep pattern, going to bed the same time every night, and so on. It also includes trying to encourage the microbes that are your partners, your hidden partners, to be on the same schedule that you are.
Well, let me ask you a question just to pursue this. So it's not a matter of what you eat. I mean, if you do everything that you're telling us, but let's say at 10 o'clock you have a hot dog, that's not so good, right?
Well, I'll tell you, it is a matter of what you eat, because what you want to do is to develop a pattern of eating that is actually friendly to your microbial partners. Whether you realize it or not, you've got these hidden these hidden entities inside you that are partly determining when you sleep and when you wake. And I know this will sound strange to your listeners, but this hidden partnership has its crucial element. And so what I want to offer to your listeners is that it's an extremely important aspect that they experiment, most particularly with the size of their meals, the time of their meals, and the frequency of their meals, and also what their meals consist of. And we're talking about adding prebiotic foods and probiotic foods to your diet, and perhaps some supplements, depending on each individual, that can help regulate the microbes and help them be in synchrony with you. So that the art of it is, to get your best night's sleep, you've got to learn how to encourage your own metabolism, which is a partnership with these microbes, to be on the same clock. We got to set the clock for all of you, and that's a new thing. We didn't know that until very recently.
I want to ask you a question about that then, because my husband, who lived to be 93, and he was religious about going to bed at 10 o'clock every night. In fact, if we had company, he'd excuse himself, come out in his pajamas, and say, "I'm going to sleep. Just enjoy yourselves."
Really?
Yes.
Well, that's remarkable. Here's a quick thing, and we all know this. We are sleep deprived as a nation. Just think about how people used to live in the past. There were no electric lights up until just very recently in all of human history. Let's not forget, humans, they keep on changing the dates, but roughly 200 million years for the type of human that we are, the type of primate that we are, the specific hominid. So over 200,000 years, we've had worked on a sleep-wake cycle that pertained to the rising and the setting of the sun. Certainly there was fire and so on, that was artificial light, but for most of our human history, we've lived on a sleep-wake cycle that's determined by the pattern of the sun. Now everything's changed. And not only that, the distractions of modern life with binge watching of TV, with social networks that go to all hours of the night, the inability to get off our phones, our texts, they're all getting in the way of our sleep. So they calculate that we are sleeping between 1 and 2 hours a night less than we used to throughout the history of humankind. And here's what happens. It builds up over a lifetime. And so among people that are older, they are more prone to a problem with sleep because older people have what's termed fragmented sleep. And everybody who's older knows this is true. You just don't sleep through the night the way you used to. Your bladder is one thing, but you spontaneously wake up and you don't know why, and it's hard to get back to sleep. There's also a new thing where people think, researchers believe that modern populations suffer what's called a dream deficit. In other words, we're not only not getting as much sleep as we used to before, but we're getting disturbed sleep. And the stages of the sleep cycle, which are imperative, there are major stages that are called rapid eye movement and non-rapid eye movement. There's no sense in going through all this detail, except to say both of these are crucial for restorative sleep. One stage leads to muscle relaxation and dreaming. Another stage is just kind of a drowsy stage where there's muscle twitching. But all of this is necessary for you to be your best you. And when you don't get it night after night, it becomes a repetitive pattern. You begin to break down. Your metabolism breaks down. And here's the thing that we didn't know before. What the meaning of that is not only our internal clock, our hormones, our own cells, but these microbes that are in us, on us, they're part of us. We cannot live without them. And so it's a partnership. So in a practical sense, what can you do? Well, your husband was on to the most critical thing of all, an established pattern. And that includes, obviously, when you go to sleep. But not only when you go to sleep, but do you really turn off the TV? Do you actually turn everything, just exclude everything to permit yourself to go to sleep? And secondly, you need to stick to a firm eating schedule because those two are in partnership with each other. And you have to limit. There's a general belief most people do better with a limited fat content, particularly at night. It helps them with that sleep-wake cycle. And that limited fat content and more fiber is what your microbes are looking for. It is believed, particularly on the side of fiber. It helps set their clock. So these prebiotic and probiotic fibers are those foods that your microbes prefer. It helps them regulate their own metabolism. They have a cycle of their own. It's that they have genes that are called clock genes, just like our own cells have. And so you're feeding them in a manner that helps them be their best selves. And so you want to keep these things in a regular pattern and have more frequent, smaller meals. And that's what your microbes want, and that's what you want, whether you know it or not.
So Dr. Bill Miller is my guest, and he's just filled with all sorts of goodies, and I'm just chomping at the bit with questions. So I'm going to ask you a few while you take a breath.
Okay.
First of all, if you go to sleep, and let's say you go to sleep at 10, 11, and you wake up to go to the bathroom once, twice, you go right back to sleep. Is that a problem? I mean, is it really disturbing your sleep?
No, it isn't as long as you go back to sleep. But
right.
We know
that
in our modern context, a lot of people don't do that. They get distracted. Something pops in their brain,
right?
and they're back on looking at a text or doing something silly.
Right. One thing also, my husband and I never had TV in our bedroom. We didn't believe in that because bedrooms are for sex and for sleep, right?
I'm an addict. Oh, no.
Oh, no. We didn't
But
do
I
that.
wouldn't turn it back on if I ever go to sleep. If I go to sleep, and I do stick to a regular schedule myself, and I do like watching TV a little bit before I go to sleep, but I choose a very boring program. It is imperative, I think, that you don't put the TV back on because it just gets you going again.
No, that's right. Now, I have another.
You don't want to listen. You don't want to turn on Fox News or MSNBC, depending on your political.
Oh, absolutely not. Of course. Of course. I agree with you. Or and some of the other HBO violent shows. But let's just go a little bit further.
Yes.
What about taking a hot bath before you go to bed or listening to a meditation tape, because that's what I do.
Well, I think those are terrific ideas. One of the things I said, and I didn't emphasize it as much as I meant to so far, I'm a very big believer that people have to take charge of their own health, and by that I mean there should be a willingness to experiment and to stick to an experiment for a number of weeks to see if it works. Each of these things, each of us is different, and when I talk about the microbes being partners, the nature of that partnership is different from individual to individual. There's no one size that fits all in this kind of a circumstance, and the microbial differences between each of us is one of those reasons why that's true. So I believe it's imperative if the hot bath works for you, meditation works for you, if reading is the thing that puts you to sleep, if you understand that you can't eat after 8 o'clock at night because it upsets your balance, if you find that you have to have a very small dinner and a much larger lunch, if you find that you could start prebiotic foods or a series of probiotics and stick with it for 5-6 weeks and see whether this regulates your sleep pattern. Some people have tried sleeping pills are a bad idea. Melatonin works for some people. Other people have reactive dreams to them. They dream very vividly and don't feel it's a good experience. But again, it's imperative that you seize hold of your own circumstance. Your rhythm is yours. No one else is going to be just like it. And so I really encourage people to experiment, but at a pace that gives it time to know whether it really works, which means you got to go for at least a month, 6 weeks to see if it's making a difference for you.
Well, okay, so here's some more questions. So your practice, you're a family physician?
No. I'm
tell
a
me
biologist.
what you do. You're a biologist.
Yes,
okay.
I was in active medical practice for decades, and now I'm a biologist active in this area of microbes, the microbiome, and evolutionary medicine. But all this links together because we were talking about how we've become what we are on an evolutionary basis. Why are these microbes, and we live in this partnership, and how has sleep changed over time? That's part of evolutionary medicine.
Okay, so what is Omni Biome Therapeutics? Is this a company then that you're advising, and what do they produce? Prebiotics?
Well, they're currently just doing a basic early research on the microbiome and products that might affect actually the possibility of premature labor. And this microbiome that we just touched on is a vital aspect of almost every single part of what we do, of every part of our body. This was unknown to medicine up until a very short time ago. And so there are a number of very small companies that are getting started that are just beginning to do basic research and to find products that can positively affect people's lives.
So is yogurt, is that a probiotic or a prebiotic?
Some yogurts are probiotics. You have to go ahead and look at the label, and those will be labeled as a probiotic product. And what does that mean? It means that there are billions of added bacteria, microbes, into the yogurt. And although at first this sounds uncomfortable, yogurts all have bacteria to begin with, but these have been specially cultured and are sort of jam-packed with these kinds of microbes. And there's quite a bit of research that that consuming probiotics is associated with a number of metabolic parameters, which include glucose regulation, immune status, and also now is being implicated for changes in sleep regulation, weight management too.
I make my own yogurt. I have a yogurt maker.
No kidding.
No, I don't. It's very easy. And, of course, I used to buy the plain, but I make my own, and it's wonderful. It's because it has no additives. You know, you just take one, when you're finished with one yogurt, you use a little bit of that for your other.
Yeah, it's a culture.
Yeah, culture. And so...
And you can actually, if you wanted to make your own probiotic, you can go on the web and get some supplement that you could be delivered to you that you could go ahead and add on your own. So, and then there are a number of prebiotics. Now, what do prebiotics do? They're not bacteria. they're fibers that are the nutrients. We've got a fancy term called substrates, but these are the nutrients that that microbes want. It's basically food for the microbes, and these include some pretty common things: onions and leeks, asparagus, bananas. Chicory root is very good, and there are you can go ahead and make it a habit, at least in one of your meals or a couple of your meals a day, to include foods that are in that prebiotic category. Again, the web is great on looking up which is which. There are prebiotic products, supplements that can be purchased. Again, I encourage people to try. No one knows what's going to be the right combination for you. But if you start thinking about yourself as your own scientific experiment, it is perfectly reasonable for you to go ahead and it can have a dramatic impact on your life, and you need to do it patiently and systematically. And that's the thing that's different. You can't go to a doctor and have him tell you exactly what's right for you. You have to experiment to that result.
Well, I see where you're also an artist, which is interesting because I guess you had to have a way to relax. You're so involved in all this, and so do you paint scenes from the West?
No, wouldn't that be logical? This is going to make you smile. I mostly do figurative work, and I mostly do nudes. But that makes sense because I studied anatomy, and I like the human form. I might particularly like the female form, but we shouldn't probably go there on this program. But anyway,
it's okay because
and I do portrait work. I actually am a pretty well-known portrait artist, at least in my community here.
I'm going to have to look all that up. Now, my husband and I always collected art, and most of it was nude females. So that's why it's kind of funny.
Well, you must definitely look on my website.
I'm going to, and I'll take you some pictures of some fantastic things that we have. But just getting back to this. So
yes.
These things inside you, let's say most people, I would hear anyway, in South Florida, they're not taking any of this. That many of them are eating, some people are eating raw food, some people are eating a lot more vegetables, but a lot of people haven't adhered to this. So is that going to shorten their life, or what is it going to do to them?
Well, again, it's quality of life that we're talking about at the moment. The studies on longevity are only indirect. That is, we know that if you follow the proper lifestyle and the proper sleeping pattern, we know that it lowers stress, and we know that stress is one of those factors that leads to longevity. So we know for certain that higher levels of stress shorten lives. But the exact formulas, for me to say if you don't eat probiotics, your life will be shortened, there's no way for any physician to say that yet. But what we are finding out is that there is an extremely intimate relationship between these microbes that I'm talking about and our metabolism, that we used to think, we never knew that partnership existed. We know that these microbes affect our level of glucose management, our weight management. We know those things affect our lifespan. So it is certainly fair to infer that if you follow a pattern in which your metabolism, one measure of your metabolism, which is what you're getting, restorative sleep, if that's in order, then the rest of your metabolism is likely to be at its best that it can be for you. Again, it's always a matter of each individual. There's, as I said before, there's no single formula for any one individual. You have to experiment your way towards that.
And from looking at your picture, you seem like you're quite trim, and that's probably because you eat so carefully.
It is, but I'm going to be very direct in this regard. And I've advised a lot of people on weight over time. It's not virtue. All I'm doing is what works for me. And yes, I have followed my advice in this respect. I have experimented into a pattern that I know is a good one for me. But the reason that I'm trim is that was what my genetic complement and my microbial partners, that's what they wanted. I'm only just being me. Other people are not given that same body morphology, and we know that being lean is generally healthier. Well, certainly better than being substantially overweight. A small amount of excess weight is not statistically harmful. We've got to learn to be relaxed. Again, the major thing is you have to find out what's best for you. It's best not to look at anyone else and to simply consider yourself and your own personal happiness, your own, how do you feel, or do you feel that you are as healthy as you've ever felt before? And if the answer is yes, then you're doing the right thing for you and don't really matter what someone else does.
And do you exercise?
I happen to love vigorous exercise. So.
That figures.
But again, it's not. I'm not being virtuous. It's not one of those things where, I'm such a great fella. I'm out there. I just love it. I do it because I like it.
What do you do?
I jog. I run every day.
Okay, so do you have a pet?
I don't. We used to have a terrific German Shepherd, and living here in Arizona, it just happens that we live a busy life. My wife and I, and our children are out of the house. We would not be good pet parents right now, and so we've chosen not to have a pet. But it bothers me, particularly because I love dogs. And by the way, it's just a quickly interesting aside. Talk about microbes. Pets, particularly hairy pets, furry pets, transfer some very beneficial microbes to humans. They lower the incidence of allergies and asthma, particularly among children. So children growing up among pets is associated with very nice outcomes for asthma and allergy compared to those homes in which there is no pet. Interesting new research that has been verified.
I thought what you're going to say is it helps people sleep. If you have a pet that's in your bed with you, I think
there's nothing wrong with it. There are trillions of microbes being transferred, but that's not bad. People get very overwrought about dirt. Dirt's not a killer in most circumstances. I'm not talking about pathogenic germs, and I'm not talking about influenza. Mostly, if a pet gives you a better night's sleep, then that's the right thing for you. Other people can't do it. That's better for them.
Well, so I just want everyone to know my guest, very interesting guest, is Dr. Bill Miller, and he actually went to medical school, but then has decided, right? And you did a lot of medical work, but now
decades of it.
Decades, and you decided not to do that anymore, but you're doing something you think is pretty important to try to change what people do in their lives. And you do this with, of course, we talked about sleep, but you're talking about with prebiotics, probiotics, and also all the new things that people the scientists are discovering.
Yes, my major mission, if I'm allowed to say that, is having had the privilege of treating people for decades in medical practice, but learning an entirely new understanding about our bodies, about what we are as human beings, learning how that there's a crucial balance between us and our microbes. This is where medicine is going. It is, I like to call it the seventh wave. It's the number of advances of material improvements in our lives that will come from the research into this particular partnership that I'm talking about, which is at multiple levels and at all sites of our body, is going to yield the next set of crucial advantages for our health, perhaps much more so than gene therapy, which has its own forms of promise, but has not yielded what we had hoped for to date. There is very little doubt that learning how to manipulate this microbial fraction of ours that we must have is going to have imperative impact on our health over time.
And so if someone, of course, you live in Arizona, so it's not possible for someone to talk with you or to have you work with them. How would you suggest, have you written a book?
Yes, the book is called The Microcosm Within.
Oh, I didn't see that.
And it is all about this partnership between microbes and ourselves. It explains why this has occurred and what has been the pattern of evolution that's followed. And that is my particular area of interest. And it's available on the web. It's available through at Amazon.com, for example, Barnes & Noble, or through my publisher, Universal Publishers. Also, if your listeners are interested in in learning a little bit more about science. Many of the articles that are placed include information about microbes and this kind of partnership that I'm talking about at Bill Miller, MD, on Twitter.
Well, let me just tell you that I'm going to get in touch with you because we do book reviews, and I would like to discuss that with you. It sounds like we need more of what you're saying, and
it would be a privilege. Thank you.
I'm
yes.
really, I'm very. It's funny. I'm a gerontologist. I've been doing this for 25 years, and the radio and the Boomer Times. Did you get a copy of Boomer Times? Do you know what we do?
Yes, I do.
Okay, so we've been doing this, and this is new information, not about sleeping, because a lot of the things you were saying, not about the probiotics and the prebiotics, but a lot of other things that you've been telling us. But it looks like your research is new and very exciting. So I will get back in touch with you and we'll talk. But it's been wonderful, Dr.
Thank
Miller.
you.
I really enjoyed
great.
this.
Thanks so much. You're a terrific interview, and I really enjoyed it.
Thank you, too. All right, bye.
Okay, talk to you. Bye-bye.